Hello and welcome to Antique Needleworkers. My name is Shellie and this is my channel about cross stitch and all my crafty endeavors. I am so glad that you have joined me here today. If this is your first time and you're a new subscriber, I thank you so much for stopping by. I hope that today you find something that brings you inspiration or you learn something and it helps you along your journey. And if you're a returning subscriber, I thank you so much for coming time and time again. Well, friends, today, as I promised, is another installation of Come and Learn with Me. I cannot believe how absolutely, how hugely you received my Come and Learn with Me. And I had someone say, well, of course, Shellie, because we're hungry to learn these things. And I'm so excited that you are because I just love to teach. I want to, like I said, inspire you, teach you something, and help you along your journey. And so I'm going to continue with this series. I don't know exactly, it's not going to be a scheduled film, Come Learn with Me at every certain segment. I am just going to go where the Spirit leads me and go with that. But today's Come and Learn with Me is going to be all about linen and all about thread. I'm going to give you a massive, well, I shouldn't say massive, but I am going to give you a big lesson on the history and production of linen and thread. If you have been around for a while and you saw video 19, that video was called What's All the Hoopla? Let's Talk About Hoops. Or if you've been around for any longer than a minute, then you know that I love the history of things. I am a lifelong maker. And I want to know all the nuances, the ins and outs of everything. But back in that video, I walked you through the history of hoops. And I found it quite interesting, and I think a lot of you guys did too. And that gives you a little taste of my teaching style. And then in a video 29, I did a half-an-hour segment in that video where I taught about silks. And so if you did not see those, I hope that you'll hop back to 19 and 29 and check those out. But I said that to say this. I am going to give you an expository on not just the counts and the names. I want to teach you about linen. I feel like and thread as well, because I feel like, you know, there's a lot of people who absolutely love the craft and they love linen. I hear people say all the time, oh, linen is my very favorite thing about stitching, or oh, thread is my very favorite thing about stitching. And outside of stitching with it or the maker of it, they have no idea anything else about it. One of their favorite things that they spend hours and hours and hours of time with. And I feel like when we get acquainted with the tools and the materials that we use in this craft that we love so much, then it broadens our love for it. It broadens and heightens our understanding of it. And so that's the way I'm going to teach today. And like I said, we're going to talk about linen. And not just linen, we're going to talk about linen, even weave, and Aida. I'm going to demystify a few things. As I said, most of you have been around for a long time, but for those of you who are new, I am a multi-crafter. I spin, I weave, I rug hook, I rug punch, I punch needle, I quilt, sew, crochet, knit, I shear my own sheep, and I make it into yarn, and sometimes I weave it, sometimes I crochet it or knit it. But so I say that to say this. When we're going to talk about linen and when we're going to talk about the fabric, the great thing, and also when we talk about the thread, the great thing that my skill set brings to this is I want you to understand the properties and the premise of your linens and or your Aidas or your or your even weaves in your threads with the understanding of the spinning and the weaving behind it, because that's very, very important. We're going to go back in history and I'm going to teach you some things, and it will help you understand and love your craft that much more. So with that being said, the first part of the video, I'm going to spend my time on the very first part. Now let me digress for just a second. This video, I intend to be a teaching tool not only for a new stitcher. The new stitcher is actually what actually bred this series, because it's, Shellie, can you show us? Shellie, can you teach us? I'm new, I'm craving to learn. But this lesson and all the lessons, I want you to know that I've crafted this so that not only the new stitcher, but the veteran stitcher can learn something as well. So this is a broad coverage. This is for anyone and everyone. And I hope you'll stick through the video and come and learn with me. But the very first topic is going to be our fabrics. And I want to begin by talking about the history, okay? We have linen, we have even weave, we have Aida. They come in all kind of different counts, they come in all kind of different materials and all of that. But what's the oldest known cloth that's been found? You guessed it, it's linen. The oldest known cloth that has ever been found was linen, and it just happens to be one of our favorite things. So linen was found in Egypt, and it can be found in mummies' tombs as clothing, as wraps, and then it's been found in other places of the world. And obviously outside of skins, people figured out how to take plant matter, which would be the flax plant. And I'm going to show you this. Of course, I said I'm a spinner, so I have this. I bought this book a very long time ago, and the premise of having it was for spinning. But boy, it sure came in handy when I was trying to prepare to do this Come Learn With Me. So from Egypt, how did it get every place else? Well, throughout the Mediterranean civilization, it started to spread, and it went from Egypt in the Mediterranean, and it began to be exported throughout time. It went to India, China, Persia, and then it hit Europe. And one of the big things when it hit Europe, it really exploded. Back in way long ago, the 16th, 17th century, Europe was known as the linen belt. Not only were they growing it and were they preparing it, spinning it and weaving it, they were selling it, and it became a cottage industry far and wide. It was a very important commodity, and I'm going to read you a little something out of here. Hold on, let me go here. Let me put some glasses on. Apart from the uses of linen in daily affairs throughout Europe, it also had a ceremonial role as mentioned in the coronations of kings and queens of England. It prescribed that the soon-to-be crowned monarchs should be anointed with holy oil, wiped clean with linen cloth, and that his or her head should be held with a linen cloth during the anointing. A linen headpiece, linen gloves were also to be worn. Linen was considered so valuable in 1580 when Francis Drake sailed into the harbor of Lima, Peru to ransack 12 Spanish cargo ships. He took not only their treasure, but their entire stock of linen as well. So it was a big deal, and when it went through time and it headed over that way, then it started spreading everywhere, and it was a very, very, very fine fabric. Now, there's a whole dissertation in this book about throughout those medieval times where in the 1660s, where people would try to move. There was also cotton in Egypt, and cotton started making its way, but it was a lot more subservient to the linen. And let me show you again the cover. This is a linen plant. This is what flax looks like, and that's what linen is derived from. And so anyway, this book and some other things that I have read that I have based on spinning and weaving, which wasn't that just so great that I had all this? It tells such a great story of the simplicity of a plant that can change the trajectory of nations. And I wanted to tell you, when we talk about linen, and when we talk about even weaves, and when we talk about Aidas, we're talking about our cloth that we use to stitch with. And if we started with linen and even weave, they run on the same count system pretty much. It's slightly different, but the whole of it is very close. And in the linen, it comes in 10 count, 18 count, 20 count, 28 count, 30 count, 32 count, 36 count, 40 count, 46 count, 56 count, and then there's also a 5364. And it is by a different, not all linens have even pacing, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But the reason why I wanted to bring those up now is because a lot of linens have names, and they're names of cities. And I'm going to read you something in a second, but I want to go over a few of the names. Okay, a 20 count linen is Cork. That's a city in Ireland. 28 is Belfast. That's a city in Ireland. 30 count, there's a 30 count, but it doesn't have a name. 32 is Belfast. That's a city in Ireland. 36 count is Edinburgh, and that's a city in Ireland. Then there's Newcastle, and that Newcastle is actually at the very top in the northern part of England. I happen to know that because I have a brother-in-law who's from there. But Newcastle is almost to the Scottish border of England. And then you have Bristol, which is 46 count. And Bristol is a town in England. But 46 count, there's two names. For 46 count, one is Bristol, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, and one is Bergen. Bergen is in Norway. And then you have 56 count Kingston, and that's a town in Ireland. Now, why did I go over all of the call names for them? Okay, first off, when we talk about the count of linen, if we say that it's a 40 count linen, that means there's 40 threads per inch in the warp and the weft. But not all linens are made like that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about as a weaver and a spinner is the fact that linen is considered an even weave, but you've got to get into the minutia of that topic there, because that's not exactly what we're talking about when we say even weave. People think that it's the warp and the weft threads. It is the warp and the weft, but what they're talking about is the evenness of the thread that has been made to be put in the warp and the weft. When you weave a plain cloth or a even weave, everything is symmetrical. But when you look at linen is not usually like that. There's slubs in it. There's very thin threads. There's thick threads. It's very different. I have to say, I have spun cotton and linen, and it's so much easier to spin wool. You really have to learn the technique, but to get that even preciseness, you know, it's not like you get when you get a true even weave. And when we talk about even weaves, we're talking about a Lugana, or a pure even weave, which is 100% cotton, or a Linda, which is 100% cotton, and it's a 27 count. Luganas go everywhere from 25 count up to 40 count, and they call 40 count Verdal because Verdal is not purely cotton. It's got a viscose mixed in with it. Lugana is 52% cotton and 48% rayon. But they are 25, 27, 28, 32, 36, 40. And but when we talk about that, let's just say I had a piece of yarn here. And I strung the yarn up, and it was a very nice texture. But then I strung another piece of yarn up, and it was thin in the middle, but thicker at the two ends. That's what we're talking about when we look at linen. Listen, there is a type of linen that's called even weave linen. It is a true thing, but you're not really seeing that in the linen that you get, because what even weave means, if you ever have picked up a piece of Lugana or even weave, you see that all the threads are the exact same width and thickness, and they make a perfect weave. There's no small threads, no big threads. And so a true even weave is not because of the numbers, it's because of the constitution of the fibers that makes it. And so it's not that it's not true to say that there's the warp and the weft, but the real truth of the matter is even weave is constituted by the thickness or the thinness and the evenness of each of the threads in the warp and the weft. So when people say, I can't stitch on linen, there's little threads and I miss them and I don't get my count right, or there's slubs and it throws me off, and then you say to them, well, here, try a piece of even weave, and voila, they can stitch on it, because all of the threads in the warp and the weft, they're perfectly even, symmetrical, perfect. And so a true even weave, which you can purchase a even weave linen, but it is like of the greatest magnitude of linen. I will say this, that Legacy Linens is a linen that I'm going to talk about when we go to the table, and it is the closest thing. Looking at it, I wish Christine Byrne was here from Mountain Craft Studios. She and I are very, very, very much alike. We do all the same acumen with our crafting, and I just feel like every time I see her, listen to her, talk to her, that we're like kindred spirits, because she understands. And I wish she was here because she could help and concur with me when we talk about the constitution of fibers, because that spinner has to get that spinning just right, just perfect for that to be an even weave. And so you see that in your Luganas, you see that in your even weaves, and you see that in your Lindas and your Verdals. But in linen, there's always slubs. But there is a thing called even weave linen, but you're not seeing it very much. And let's go back to the names. So some of those names, one was in Norway, a couple were in England, Newcastle and Bristol. And why do you think that those names were given? I can't say for sure, but I can surmise. And I'm going to read the next thing to you, which is going to help me. Now, I've already told you that through the 16th and 17th centuries, all of Europe was known as the linen belt. It was their greatest commodity. And it says, the success in changing Ireland's economy is shown in the dramatic increase in linen exports as percentages of Ireland's total exports, from 8% in the 17th century to 56% by 1790. Into the 19th century, flax and linen production were still primarily home and farm-based in Ireland. To quote again from the history of the Irish Parliament, and it goes into how the father wove, did the marketing and any business associated with it, and trained his sons. And when they were of an appropriate age, the men also did supplementary farming and fishing, depending on local circumstances. And the mother looked after the house. She spun the flax, taught the younger children to prepare for her in due course, and trained her daughters in skills. So this was a cottage industry. It was all over. This was before the Industrial Revolution. And I'm going to talk later when I talk about the threads about how the evolution of the I lost my words. The evolution of the of when machinery was made. Why does my brain? I just went blank. The Industrial Revolution, that's what I was trying to say, friends. When it went from people who spun this at home. Now, you saw in the intro some of my spindles sitting there. I sat those there for a reason, because that's how until 1730, the spinning wheel did not exist. So all of this industry that we're hearing about in the 1700s, these were done by farmers and people. But do the math, in 1700, 8% of Ireland's exports were linen. But by 1790, because this is an explosion, it was 56%, and it's done on the farms. Though they're growing it, and they're processing it, and they're making it, and here it comes. Now, why is that important when I'm talking about the names? Okay, so I would just have to guess that these names were given because they maybe were highlighted places where different parts of the industry may be growing. Maybe there were more, Belfast was very, very highly touted for its linen. And so, but then we go into like Bergen, that was in Norway. But like I said, it wasn't just Ireland. It was the entirety of Europe was very, 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 it was called the linen belt, because it was an explosion of cottage industry. And then you moved into the Industrial Revolution, and then there's even a bigger explosion. And so I would surmise to think that the names were given because of all that went on when it came to Europe. And of course, Ireland, they're high. 56% of their exports were linen. Was it linen yarns, fabrics, threads, all the above? But it was all being done at home. Can you believe that? And so I thought it would be really interesting for you to know a little bit about where and how and what about your fabric. Some people just pick it up and it's just their fabric. Isn't it neat to know all that background? Now, I do want to go back to the 46 count, because I want to talk about that little thing where 46 is the only one, and it has two names, and it's Bristol and Bergen. Bergen is a town in Norway, and then Bristol is a town in England. Bristol 46 count is considered extra fine and expressly conceived just for needlework. Bergen is an elegant fabric, but it has slight irregularities in its structure, and it is suited for embroidery and cross stitch. But do you see that? So it's not that it's not a fine linen. These high count linens are very fine. They're getting into very, very fine because of the amount and the thinness, etc., etc. But Bristol, it's extra fine, and it's expressly conceived just for needlework. Now, Bergen is elegant, but it's slightly irregular. So if you ever wondered why your 46 was Bristol or Bergen, I think that tells us why. So I thought you'd also like to see this, the process of making the flax plant into a thread or a yarn so that it can be spun up and turned into that. It's a long process. They grow it and it looks like this. But then after they harvest it, they do one of two ways. Now let me see if I can't get you in here. This is called, my light is just not being very helpful. That's better. This is called the retting process. This is called field retting, like Rhett Butler, retting. And really it's a process of rotting because the outside of flax is very coarse and very thick and woodsy. There's another way of retting, and it's water retting, and they will take it and soak it in water. And basically what you're getting, whatever you're doing, whether you're field retting it or if you're water retting it, you are trying to bust up that, rot that a little bit so you could break it up. And then you go into the next tool that's used once you've ret it down and you've softened that outer casing. They use a, oops, I just dropped something. And they take it to this tool right here, and they go into the crushing, or they call it scooching. Breaking, scooching, and then they comb it. And this, do you see this? It's kind of like they pound it between there. And then, I'm sure if you've gone to any antique mall, you have seen one of these devices that looks like a torture tool. This is actually called a hackle, and that is what you comb flax out with. So when you take it and you ret it, whether you lay it in a field and let it soften down, break down that hard exterior, then you take it and you scooch it and you break it between that machine. And so you're breaking off that outer tresses so that the tresses in the center, and then you start to hackle it and comb it, and these beautiful tresses come out in the middle, and then they get gloriously spun and turned into fabric that it will either be a household item, but for us, it's our linen. So that is my story that I just was so excited to tell you about. I had talked about how there are linens that are not, they're not even. So you've got 30, 37, 38, 45, 48, and one called 5364. And that Legacy Linens by Access Commodities, they put those out. They are gorgeous. They look, with my naked eye as a spinner and a weaver, when you look at a Legacy Linen, which I'm going to show you here when I take you to the table, they are absolutely, they're meticulous. They've got a thicker constitution to them because they're pretty darn even, and they're very nice. I do have to put it in a hoop stand, and I two-hand it because it's really hard to slide the needle because it's a little thicker, because it's fine linen as far as I'm concerned. And then, like I said, you've got your even weaves, and so we've talked about the linen. Then you've got your even weaves, which they closely resemble linen, but they're 100% cotton and they're exact. So when you pick up, there are no slubs, there are no thick and thin. It is perfection, perfect grid. You can't miss your thread. And if you've ever wanted to try if you're an Ada stitcher and you've wanted to try something else, you really should try an even weave, a Lugana, a Linda, a Verdal, or something like that, because they're very, very nice fabrics to work with. And then we have Ada. Now, Ada was created and introduced in 1890 by the Zweigart Company in Germany. It was specifically made for cross stitch. It's an even weaved design with small squares, making it tremendously easy to see. It's 100% cotton, and Ada comes in 7 count, 10 count, 11, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and 22 is called Hardanger. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard or seen that. That's a different type of stitching acumen. One of the things about Ada is you don't have to count the 2 threads. It's the 4 holes. You can't miss them. And they make a very nice stitch because it's very, the center of the, where your holes are, it's comprised of 4 threads vertically and 4 threads horizontally, and they're kind of mashed together. And they give a lot of structure behind it, so it holds the stitch very, very nicely. You can do some specialty stitches, and you can do fractional stitches like stitching over 1 on Aida. It's not as easy as linen, I will tell you that, because or even weave, because you've got the, you know, the whole thing there. You've got the center holes and the sides, and so it's, you know, you don't have to puncture through, but you can do it. And the way that the beautiful Aidas are made nowadays, they are so beautiful. I'm going to show you some Aidas that, to me, unless you get up close to them, you can't even tell they're Aida. They're just so lovely. These dyers have done a fantastic job. And so that is my little talk on fabric. And so I am not going to just sit here and talk about it. I'm going to take you to the table. So how about we stop right here and let's hop on over and I'll show you some of this beautiful stuff. Okay, I'm back. Now we're at the table. I want to show you some linen now, and we're going to start, and we're just going to go through the different sizes, and we're going to go through the different types, linen, even weave, and also Aida. And I have a few little things in here that I think that'll be fun for you. As well, I'm going to show you some tips, tools, and tricks for your linen while we're here. So let's start. Okay, so let's go and talk about some 18 count linen. This right here, let me change my lighting. This lighting is not good. There we go. Let me turn that up. There we go. Better lighting. All right, so here we are. This is a piece of 18 count Floba. Now, Floba is a type of fabric that is a blend, and that blend is got a combination of 2 different, as a matter of fact, I've lost my piece of paper. I'm looking for it while I'm sitting here talking to you. I've got it right here. Okay, because I wanted to be able to tell you, Floba is 70% rayon and 30% linen. Okay, so this piece of fabric, let me bring you in tight. Let me bring you in. And you can see that this is a very big weave linen. So you do not stitch on Floba with standard floss unless you use all 6 strands. This you stitch with pearl cotton or with all 6 strands of floss. Okay, and so you can also get an 18 count linen, but I just didn't happen to have that. So, but this is Floba, and this is a shepherd's bush stocking for my granddaughter that I'm stitching, and it'll make it nice and big. This is the toe right here, and it'll work its way up. And so that's Floba. And again, you can see that big, nice, open, easy. Don't even need cheaters to stitch on that. Okay, and then the very next thing I'm going to show you is 20 count cork. This is 100% linen. You can see that right there. And this is a product that Lori Holt brought out. This is just her brand. She's not the only one that has it, but you can find this at Fat Quarter Shop. Sorry about the noise. But it looks very similar to 18 count raw linen, or it gives the same, it's just a 20 count. So the holes are just a little smaller, if you can see that. Okay, so that is 20 count cork. So that means that there's 20 threads to an inch. And so that's one example of that. Isn't this fun, pulling all the stuff out? Now, this is a 28 count Wichelt linen. It's Venetian stone, and I'm going to pull it out for you. Wichelt, I will say, Zweigart is much softer. This is, there are two schools of thought. You're either, or maybe there's more schools of thought than that, but some people like really stiff linens, and they like stiff Aidas. I personally like pretty soft and supple, but anyway, they all serve their purposes depending on what you're going to use it for. But this is a 28 count linen, 100% linen by Wichelt, and I'll raise it up to the camera a little bit, and you can see the weave on that. You can see that it's now becoming tighter because there's 28 threads per inch. Let me see if I can get even tighter in. Okay, and you can see like some areas where there might be thick and thin, like right here, a slub maybe. See that? Those are those imperfections that sometimes throw people off. But once, listen, the more you do anything, the easier it becomes. I will tell you that my friend Sylvia, Running with Needles and Scissors, and I both say this, that your eyes, you've got to give it time to let your eyes relax into it. So if you're used to stitching on Aida or an even weave, do give your eyes a little time, and I'm going to show you some helps for being able to stitch here in just a little bit, because remember, I've got those tools. This is a 28 count. This is a color in cotton. I need to leave, this one's not, the bag's got its name on it, so there's a color in cotton. Here's a 28 count fox and rabbit. Let me pull out just a little bit. There we go. Okay, and so there's some 28 counts, and you can see that the weave on them is, again, tighter than what you saw, but you can still see that pretty well. Okay, so that's a 28 count linen. And now we're going to start moving up to our 32s. Now these are some brands that you can pick up at Hobby Lobby. This is a 32 count Murano, and Murano is from a different place. It's not from Ireland. And that, I think that's an Italian name, but these were done. The neat thing, these came from Hobby Lobby. Let me tell you something. These fabrics, do you see what that says? Zweigart. These are Zweigart fabrics. They're fantastic. They make great linen, and you can buy that at Hobby Lobby. This is a gray checkered. These are great for some of those Nikki's creations that you do, and these are 32 count. Let me pull one out, and I will show it to you. And so now the weave is getting tighter. Do you see? Because there's 32 inches. There's 32 threads per inch. You see that? Okay. Now, let me adjust again. Just trying to make sure you get to, I'm using that boom, that nice boom that I bought using my Buy Me a Coffee link that y'all used. Thank you very much to you subscribers who did that. This boom is from you to me. Okay, this is a Nikki's Creation gingham fabric. It's a 32 count. The first time I ever stitched on this, I have to tell you, it was so difficult for me to stitch on this gingham because do you see where there's the mid color? You've got the white, the brown, but that mid color, when I would have to put a needle in there, it took some real settling of the eyes, but I was able to do it, and 32 count was great. Okay, and so that's another 32 count. Then I brought over a piece of black. This is a black 32 count Belfast linen. And for those of you who like to stitch the black things, I will tell you that once you get a couple stitches in, you can do it. But the black Aida and the chalkboard Aida are really a stitcher's best friend. very much a stitcher's best friend. This is this was a ditched effort, and it's back in the box. This is a 30 count that has been, I think that this, I forget the name of who this was. It's kind of stiff, that's why I ditched it. You can see that it kind of like can stand up on its own. But you can see the weave in there. This is a 30 count linen. And I wish I could tell you who that was. I can't tell you who that was. Now there's other things that, before we move on past the 32, let me show you some banding. I love doing band samplers. And this is about a 27 count band sampler band. You can get these, you can buy banding on 123 Stitch. You can find them at your LNS's. Sassy Jacks has a great selection of them here in America. And this is another type, and it's a linen, but they also, I don't have any, but they do make Ada banding, and you can find that. There were 3 or 4 pages of it on 123 Stitch. And so that's another thing that you can stitch on, which is wonderful. And I love these decorative edges. There's one that looks so Christmassy with little trees on the side and stars. It's so neat. But I'd like to get some banding. I have some that's this raw looking linen with red, but I'd like to buy a white one with a red and do a red band sampler down it. But that's about a 27 count. So, okay, so now we're going to move up a little bit. We are going to move to 36 count linens. Now this is one of my favorite linens right here. This is from the Sampler Linen Collection from Northumberland Sampler House. You can find her on Etsy and on Instagram. She hand dyes. She doesn't have linen all the time. But that drape that I was telling you about, this is a Zweigart base. But just the drape of her, it's just so good. I love this. I love her linens. One of my faves. And this is a 36 count. And this color is Fern. You can see that. This is an XJU design, and I was part of their Prim Fabric of the Month. This was for August that year, and this is a 36 count linen, and it's called Pine Bud. But see, now you've got 36 threads per inch in there, so you're getting a tighter weave. But 36 and 40 are my kind of favorite spot. I really like them. This next one is Atomic Ranch. This is Wild Mint, and it's 36 count. That's a really good representation of the color. And I'll bring it up so that you can see the weave on that. This next one is Cornflower, and it's by Fiber on a Whim. 36 count. See that? See, on an even weave linen, there's less and less and less of that because it's very fine spun threads. This is Dirty You by Dames of the Needle. I'm sorry, it's a little wrinkly. The way I store my linens, if you were curious, I know that that's a question, is I have them in bins, and I have them in under my cutting table, and I also have bins across the room that I sit in front of. There are 4 over there, bins filled. I have bins and bins and bins of linen, and I had wanted to possibly put it on hangers. I would need a whole walk-in closet to do that, so that's not going to work. So I have mine in bins. I tried to take it out of the plastic, and I'm going to talk some more about linen care. I give you some great advice from the dyer from R&R Fabrics. She has some great information, and I'm going to share that with you. And as we talk some more, this is a Lop and Loops. I just actually got this. This is Graveyard Mist. That's a really good representation down there. 36 count. This is Wren by Picture This Plus. It's one of my very favorite colors. And it's 36, as I said, and I'll get you close to the weave. Picture This Plus can tend to be a very tight woven fabric, and that doesn't mean that it's tightly woven. It's the dyeing process tightens that weave down. And so sometimes people say, oh, you know, PTP, it's really tight. So, but it's one of my favorite. This is Be Stitch Me, One More Reproduction, and I'm going to pull both of these out. These are both One More Reproduction, but I wanted to show you because I want you to look at the difference in that color. This is 40 count and this is 36 count. Do you see the saturation of the dye difference? I'm going to show you this again in another piece of a different linen. But isn't that interesting? So this is 36 and this is 40. Look how that saturation was different. And of course everything's always never exact because these are hand dyed. But I thought that that was an interesting thing. While I was pulling the 36, I grabbed the 40, the very same fabric by the same dyer, different constitution based on the weave. So very, very interesting. I'm going to throw this back in my 40 pile back here. Okay, and then this, where am I at now? Okay, we're moving on to 40 count. I've gone through the 36s. Okay, this is Atomic Ranch, and this is a 40 count, and it's called Sky. That's a pretty good representation of it. But now we've gone up to 40 threads per inch, and you can see that the weave is much tighter. Let me see if I can't get on camera so you can see. So this is a 40 count, and everything, I do have a lot of sampler colors, so I apologize because I am a sampler loving fanatic. And so anyhow, you'll see a lot of that. This is a 40 count R&R fabric, Winter's Brew. Like I said, R&R. And Pat Ryan, she has done some great talking on the care of your linen, how to get wrinkles out, and all the above. And I'm going to tell you all of Pat's tips and tricks in just a moment when I'm talking about tools, tips, and tricks. So that is that. And then this is a 40 count angel hair by Weeks Dye Works. And I believe this might be the old Weeks because it's a much more open weave. So I think that this, you hear people say, is that the old Weeks or the new Weeks? Let me just open that up again. See how you can kind of see through that? See, it's very open weave. This is pretty easy to stitch on for a 40 count, the older Weeks. But let me show you this. This is Hog Bristle by Fox and Rabbit. But let me put my hand under there. Can you see my hand like that? See, the weave is tighter. So this was by the older Weeks, they used a different dye manufacturer. The new Weeks is done with Zweigart, and you always know that you have a Zweigart linen when it has an orange stripe. And so this is Hog Bristle 40 count from Fox and Rabbit. Love it. And then this is a 40 count Steinbeck by Needle and Flax. There are 3 colors of Needle and Flax that are my very favorite. Steinbeck being 1, Dirty Teacup being number 2, and Brea. They are my favorite. And I will say, and I said this before, Rachel's 46 count is a very nice linen if you wanted to try a 46. Hers, I'm not a dyer. I've dyed stuff, but I wouldn't put myself up there with dyeing information is what I'm trying to say. But her dyeing process does not make this so tight. And you can stitch on a 46. This is a 40, but a 46 is very, very nice to stitch on. And you can see the threads there. But she does a great job. I don't know her process. Love her process, though. She does a great job. Now I'm going to move up to 46 count. Another one of my favorite 46s is from this lady right here, Those Missing Stitches. And she does a great job. I don't know her dyeing process. This is about, you know what? I'm going to grab a board and put it under there and see if that doesn't help. That's much better. As a matter of fact, let me grab the big board. I have a bigger board. That way we can maybe see a little better. I really do use my boards. Okay, yeah, that's a better representation of color. This is just some absolutely beautiful 46. Those Missing Stitches, fantastic 46. Very nice to stitch on. You can buy a Zweigart 46, and it's a Bristol. Remember, I told you about Bergen and Bristol. Bristol is a very, very fine, and you can see this. This is some very, oh, look at the drape on that too. This is very finely done, beautiful, but this Artiste brand from Hobby Lobby, you see that $6.49 for 11 by 18, and 11 by 18 is a lot of real estate on 46 because you can do a whole lot of stitching on 46 because it makes it so much smaller. But this Bristol is, yeah, it's a very nice, and you can just go to Hobby Lobby if you ever wanted to try one, and it, like I said, you can see it pretty well, you know, pretty easily because of, it's a good linen. So anyhow, I'm just going to pop this in here, just this, so I can get it out of the way. And then this is a Fox and Rabbit Vintage Bittersweet. Is it Fox and Rabbit Vintage Bittersweet? It's not as pink as that. Let me unwrap it. So this is a 46. That's showing up a little bit darker than it really is. That's actually more like the color. But you can see the linen threads there. And this is a beautiful linen. And then now I am going to move on and I'm going to show you some of the Lakesides. First thing I wanted to show you was I wanted to do another color comparison. This is 46 count Dirty Teacup by Rachel at Linen and Flax. And I want to lay that out there, okay? This is 46. This is 40 counts. I just want to show you how the dyeing process, look at the difference in the color because of the weave. Let me pan out a little bit there. It's just this is so much lighter than this one. It's just interesting how the uptake of dye changes. So, but I love them both. I don't care which cut, whether it's 46 or 40. I love this linen, and I wanted to show you on her bags, if you buy it directly from her, she always puts these stickers on here, and she tells you basically why she names the linen that. Until the 1700s, tea was very expensive luxury item, but in the mid-1700s, the price was low enough to move from luxury to daily drink. For many, and she goes on and tells you all about those things. And I just think that her process of naming her linens and then telling you about it, if you buy it from her or you buy the whole yard. I did buy that yard from her personally. That's not why I ended up with it in the bag. But so anyway, I wanted to show you that because I wanted to show you the color variation of when you get a linen in a different count. So let's just say that you bought a linen, you wanted to buy, let's say you wanted to buy a 36 count linen, but you looked at the 36 and the 40 next to each other and you liked the 40 better. Well then, you know, it'd be neat to try, wouldn't it? So, you know, but look at all these little threads.
Okay, so now remember I told you about the Belgian linen, and I found some new old stock. This is a Belgian linen. It's 32 count. It's rough as a cob. I could see where it could be used for something else, but again, that the Irish, it's got good drape though. Let me just show you. The drape is good, but it's just rough. So I'm not so sold that Belgian's got the greatest linen for stitching. Maybe for other things. So, but I did try it because, of course, when I read and learn, I want to see all those things. Okay, so I want to talk about the legacy linens. These are different legacy linens, okay? Let me get that in there. This is 38 count, a Wayfarer's Cloak. This is 37 count corn tassel. I love that color. This is 45 count Jersey cream, and I got to make sure I've got the project bag behind me. I yanked this out of a project, out of one of my little Hands Across the Sea. And then this is another, no, is this a 56? Oh, that's a 56. All right, so yeah, I'll show you that too. This is a Kingston. This is a 56. And this is also a legacy, and this is 38 Irish coffee. Now let's talk about these linens. I want you to look at how fine this is. This linen is just so good. This is the closest to a this is the closest I find personally that looks like an even weave linen. Now it's not an even weave linen. There are slubs in there a little bit, but it is the closest thing. And I learned about these about legacy linens from Sassy Jack's. I have this little cut. It was so sweet. I was down there years ago when the shop was in the old shop at Sassy Jack's. I sat with Kimberly, and I have very bad eye problems. I have really bad vision, and I wear multifocal contacts. And I was talking to her, and she said, well, first of all, you know, this is not highly modeled, but the other thing is it's just the fineness of the linen. And she brought it to me, and by goodness, I could see the holes in this. I have a stack of these. Every color she had, she cut me a sample of, and I still to this day have kept it. It was the sweetest thing. And it was my first introduction to it, and it really is easy to see because of the evenness of the weave. Again, it's not sold as an even weave linen, but it's the evenest weave linen I have ever seen. And I mean, look at this. It's just so fine. Funny thing is you're gonna laugh when I open this. Do you see those holes? I had started that piece. This is the linen that Carrie had bought for us, and this is 38 count Irish coffee by Legacy, and it's thick, and you know they really did do some dyeing on that, and it was difficult, and I made my little scissor fob. This was the motif. This was the motif at the middle. I started at the middle at the top, and I cut the motif out and I ditched it because it's a very full coverage piece that I was stitching that, and I was like, nope. So I will say that Legacy linens, one of the things is I put it in my hoop stand, and I do two-handed to stick and stab. I sew the sewing method generally 99% of the time, but when I'm stitching on this, I will two-handed stitch in my hoop frame because Legacy is more difficult because of the nice fineness of the fabric, the good weave, the square of it, and the thickness of it. You kind of need to stick and stab it. So if I'm stitching on Legacy, it'll go in a hoop stand, and I two-handed because it's hard to manhandle and stitch it the sewing method. Last thing I want to show you here really quick. I got this from Not Forgotten Farms. I use this type of fabric. This is Osnaburg, and this is you can use this to sew with. This isn't necessarily a cross-stitch fabric, but it's used a lot, and sometimes people have referred to it as kitchen cloth. But I keep bolts of this for the things that I make. But Lori had dyed this. And Osnaburg is pretty much about a 36 count. It's super supple and soft. It's so, so nice. But it gives you that really prim, yummy look. Of course, like I said, she over dyed it. But Osnaburg generally looks maybe not as dyed as this up here, but more like in this area when it comes off the bolt. And so that's something else in the linen family. But this is Osnaburg is a cotton, so I guess you would say it's more of an even weave. So anyway, now we're going to shift gears really quick, and we're going to pull up some even weaves next. Okay, I'm back. Now, this is an even weave. This is a 25 count blackboard vintage cloth by Lori Holt. This is great to use for those blackboard projects, your black projects. 25 count even weave. This is this even weave is 48% viscose and 52% cotton. It's a 25 count. And I will pull that up there so that you can see the weave on that. And then this next one is 100% cotton and a true even weave. This is a 28 count mushroom. But you see, there's no slubs in a true even weave. No. The threads are absolutely balanced and perfectly even. That's what constitutes an even weave, is perfectly balanced threads. I'm just going to move all this to the side. Okay, then this is a 25 count pewter Lugana. And Lugana, as I had said earlier, it is a 52% cotton and 48% rayon. And let me pull this up so that you can see it. You can see those holes nice and easily. Let me go like that. See, you can see that weave. It's very nice and easy to see. And like I said, this is a 25 count, so that just really works out. That's the closest to like a 14 count Aida. This is another 25 count Lori Holt's even weave. This is a whole different brand. This is Fabric Flare. And let me show you. They screen print there. So on one side it's plain and one side it's like this. That's like a vintage country mocha. So this is whitewash board and it's a 28 count. Isn't that neat? All the things that you can get to stitch on. I mean, that is so neat. It looks like a plank of wood. This, oh, I have a piece of Bristol over here. I have a piece of Bristol here. It's in the wrong spot. I was going to show that in a different segment. Okay, this is Vintage Country Mocha, and this is a 25 count Lugana. And let's open it up so that I can show you it's done the same way. All Vintage Country Mochas. There's a plain side. And there's the distress side. But you can see the weave there really well. Again, this is 20, is it 25 or 28? 25 count. This was in something that was sent to me. And then we're going to move over now and we're going to look at a 27 count Linda. Okay. Linda is 100% cotton. It's a little stiffer. It's a little stiffer. So that is 100% cotton, but it is 27 count, which makes it that much easier to see. And then let's talk about Monaco. Monaco is an even weave. I will tell you, this is what, like Priscilla and Chelsea, this is their favorite fabric. It's stiff. So, but when it gets softer if you've dyed it and the longer you use it. But if I was stitching on this, I would stitch it in hand and I would hold it like this and I would stitch the sewing method. And I can see why they like this. This again is 100% cotton. Let's see if you can't see the weave there. Let me go this way. There you go. That's much better. You can see the weave there. Okay. And so again, that was Charles Craft Monaco. It is a cotton fabric that's a total even weave. It has a stiffer feel to it. Here's another fabric flare. And this is historic beige. And if you look on the back, it's plain. But then it, on the top, it has been screen printed with its modeling. And that's a 28 count even weave, 100% cotton. This is a 28 count white Lugana fabric. And this 28 count Lugana, or just 28 count even weave, you know the great thing about this, 32 count and 28 count, if you stitch 1/1, it makes it a piece of cake. Total piece of cake to do 1/1 and make something tiny. That puts it at about 56 count. And then this is just another piece of 28 count, white, 100% cotton, even weave. Can you see the weave there? Very, very easy to see. I generally have these, I have a yard of 32 count as well, because I have the big 28 and the 32. I can dye it and I can do 1/1 over it on that. So those are our even weaves, and so now we will move on and talk about our Adas. And as soon as I'm done showing this, I'm going to show you some examples of items stitched on this. This is 7 count Flosstube. This is this is like a 7 count Ada, but it is used, I was introduced to this at Shepherd's Bush, and this is what they make their pillows on to make the big pillows. You can find the Flosstube at Hobby Lobby. This is a 10 count even weave burlap, but they call it even weave burlap, but it is just a 10 count basically Ada, because it's got your 4 and 4. So that's what 10 count looks like. Looks like the 7, but if you notice, this one's bigger and this one's got smaller holes. So that's that. And then this is a 18 count, Not Another Sampler by Bestitch Me. This is a 16 count Color and Cotton Stoneware. This is an 18 count Fiber on a Whim Cream and Sugar. These are such beautiful Adas that they don't even look like Ada until you get right up on them. They are just nice Zweigart fabric that these have been custom dyed. They're beautiful. This is a dyer that was on Facebook, and this is a 20 count, and again you'll see that the holes are then moving to that much smaller. That would be like a 40 count linen. That's really a gray. This is a better representation. This is a 16 count Witch Out Graceful Gray, and this is like, it is so stiff it could stand up on its own. It is so stiff. This is a 14 count Waxing Moon, and that is a fiber flare. This is Oat, and it is a 18 count. This is by Bestitch Me. They've got nice Zweigart at over at Hobby Lobby. This is Fiber on a Whim. This is 18 count Wheat look at that. I mean, you can't even barely, until you get right up on it, you cannot even tell that that's Ada. Not that there's anything wrong with it. There's, picture this plus fog. These are just beautiful fabrics, are they not? This is Color and Cotton Bellini. This is 16 count. And then I've got a piece of 14 count chalkboard here, by which this is so stiff, but really honestly, this is the easiest black you will ever stitch on. Let me just say that. And then this is a piece of Vintage Country Mocha, and it's a 14 count, and like I said, on the back it's plain, and on the front it is distressed, and it's been screen printed. And those are the Ada cloths, and they are all wonderful. All of these ground fabrics are fantastic. Now let's do some show and tell. Here we go. This is my Santa that I talked about. This is done on the 7 count cloth stern. Let me get the other piece. This right here. I picked this up. This one is where I got this one. I got this at Shepherd's Bush. And see how nice that is? That it is, let me pull the camera up a little bit. Okay. But you see, that is such a nice big piece. And I did that with number 5 pearl cotton. Or you could use all 6 strands of floss. So there's an example right here of 7 count. Now let's go over here, and I'm going to show you. This is a 28 count, and you see this is one motif. And I've made the top of this pincushion. I stitched this with wool, and you have to do 28 count to get your, because the wool is thick, okay? So we've got that. Now, this is 32 count, and you see how much more you can fit on the fabric because it's smaller. I'm going to put this like this. And then we're going to move to 36 count, and you can get even more on 36 count because it gets smaller and smaller because you've got more threads per inch, so it makes for a smaller design. Then we're going to move up to 40 count. You see that? And then this is 46 count. And then this is 56 count. Do you see how tiny those stitches are? Just amazing what the difference in thread count. So let's go from the 7 count to the 56 count. Isn't that a world of difference? Okay, so I want to show you really quick some tips and tricks, real quick, some tools, because I was asked about some things like that. Okay, so let me grab some corner gauges. These are corner gauges, okay? And I'm gonna show you how to do some stuff with that. Let me grab a piece of fabric. Okay, so I have a piece of fabric here. How does one start a piece? You can start in the corner of the top, left, top right, bottom right, bottom left. You can start anywhere like that. And these corner gauges are a great little tool. If you've never seen one of these, you just, this one's a corner gauge and a thread holder. I'm going to show you if you wanted to do, this is a paper one. This is easy to carry. Got that at Sassy Jack's. This one's from the Shepherd's Needle, and this one's from the Shepherd's Bush. If you wanted a 3-inch margin, that's a 3-inch square. Right here, you could just take a pin and put it right there, and your 3-inch margin is there. You're 3 inches from the side and 3 inches from the top. And then you count your first stitch over. You find where your first stitch is from that corner and you begin. You could do that on all 4 corners. But back in the way back day, when I learned to stitch, this is my least favorite thing. Carrie Chamberlain, Tiger Lily Designs, is laughing at me right now because I have palpitations when it comes to doing center starts. Okay, so let's just say this was my whole size of my fabric. I would take my fabric and I would fold it in half. Then I would fold it in half again. And then I would pinch it like this. And then when you open it up, voila, there's the center of your fabric. And so, and a lot of people were trained like that, and you find on your grid, the 2 top and bottom and the 2 sides will have arrows, and you follow it in and find the middle stitch and start right there if you do a middle start. That gives me palpitations, but it works every time. I prefer one of the 4 corners, and it just depends on my mood which one I pick. Now, but let's talk about how do you know what size fabric that you need to have to stitch a piece? I'm going to use this Margaret Beatty as my example, and on the back it tells me that the stitch count for this piece is, one moment please, I didn't look before I started. Oops. Let me see. Okay, the design is 153. The design is 153 stitches by 220 stitches. Now, on Nicola Parkman's patterns, she always tells you the different counts of linen. She'll tell you the fabric size that you need, but she'll tell you the design size that you need. But how do you on your own if you get a pattern that doesn't like that? Okay, I'm going to turn on my calculator really quick. Okay, I've got the calculator right here. Okay, so if I wanted to figure this out and I needed to know the width of my fabric, there's 153 stitches, 1, 5, 3. And if this is 40 count fabric, this is 46, but let's just do it easy math. If I want to know, for 40 count fabric, I need to use the lowest common denominator, which would be 20. So you got to use, basically you've got to use the eta numbers. So I need to divide 153 by 20, and that tells me that my design is going to be 7.65, and that's exactly what Nicola has on here. My design. The finished design of this would not the size of your fabric, but your finished design. But to give me a 3-inch border, I need to add 3 to that. So my fabric needs to be 10.65 inches across. Okay? Does that make sense? Now let's clear this out. And my width of it is 220, and I'm going to divide that by 20. And that's going to equal 11. And you know what? I need to back up. I needed to not add 3 inches. I needed to add 6 inches because it has to be on all sides. I apologize. So I need to add 6 to that. And, oh, wait a minute. 220 divided by 20 equals 11. Plus 6 inches equals 17. So my fabric needs to be 13.65 inches by 17 inches. Does that make sense? So if your fabric, let's go back. If you are going to be using a 28 count fabric, you need to go and you need to figure your fabric with a 14, half of that. Because if you're talking about 28 count, the linen is telling you 2 threads Do you see? But we need to count it as one thread. And so what we need to do is we need to use like an ADA number. And that would be, instead of 40, you use 20. So use 14, 16, 18, 20. That would be 28, 32, 36, 40, or half of whatever the number it is. And then again, let's do that. So the width of it is 153, and we're going to divide that. We're saying this is 40 count by 20 equals 7.65 plus 6 inches, because you need 3 for this side and 3 for this side, and that equals 13.65. That's exactly what Nicola said. So that's how you figure out the height and the width of your fabric. And so, how you can use one of these neat little do jigs to find your corner if you want to start in the corner. And you can fold it if you want to start in the center. And that is how you would start your project, and that's how you would calculate how much linen you need, or ADA. And you use the 14, 16, 18, 20, and that will help you get to that number. I hope that explains that well.
Okay, now we're going to move on to our segment about thread. Okay, so I've taught you about linens and even weaves, and I've taught you about ADAs and their different counts and what they look like. I just showed you how to start either in the corners or the middle, and how to figure out what size fabric that you need. Now we need to talk about threads that we lay onto our fabric. Now, prior to the 1730s, making thread was a tremendously laborious work, and it was all done by hand. The introduction of the spinning wheel did not happen until the 1730s. And so just think about that. We are not so far removed. We are so close in. It was 1730 before there was ever a spinning wheel. So how did they spin threads? I think I'm going to surprise you when I show you this. They used one of these, a drop spindle. This is how each and every piece of thread or yarn was spun. These are drop spindles. These are some of my pretty collection. This is another drop spindle. This is a support spindle. It actually, instead of the whirl or this piece being on the top, it's on the bottom. And you spin with that, and it spin, oops, the whirl just slid right off of that. But you spin this one, and the whirls on the bottom, those are the whirls on the top. And let me hitch this on here really quick. And it spins from the bottom, like that. And then there's what's called a Russian or a Tibetan support spindle. See the Russian one? And those you put in a bowl, and you spin, and they're supported in a bowl. This would be a bowl that you sit on the table or on your lap, and this is one that can sit and you pinch it between your legs, and it's spun like that. But can you just figure, look, we waste DMC. Would you waste one single speck if this was how you got your thread? Thread and yarn was produced like this until the spinning wheel was created in 1730. That's a long time. I love to spin. I do spin on these. Obviously, I have them, but the spinning wheel is much, much greater way to spin thread. Or to spin yarn, and I've spun both. I adore to do it, and I love to watch other people in the craft. I will say that someone that I follow is Josephine Walton, and she is from Sweden, and she's an amazing, amazing woman. I'm going to put a link to her down in the description box. You are going to want to go, if you're interested in anything to do with the fiber arts. She does stitch, she spins, she weaves, she knits, you name it. She's like me. She does it all, but she's amazing. She teaches master classes, and she did a whole series that I watched. It's been a couple years ago, and she did a series where she spun all of this linen and then she wove it. Wouldn't that be interesting to us? So anyway, just amazing, amazing. So this is how you would have got thread up until 1730 when the spinning wheel was created. You know, I have a I've showed the one spinning wheel that I spun my thread on, and it's from the 1790s. So that's a very, 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 that's, you know, 60 years from the creation. So that's kind of neat to me. So how did they spin thread after? So they did it on a spinning wheel, but then in 1779, the Hargreaves spinning jenny and the Arkwright spinning frame, they were introduced, and that changed everything. And then we are moving forward, and we're heading towards the Industrial Revolution. The Hargreaves spinning jenny was invented by James Hargrave, and it could spin 8 threads at a time, and it could be ran by one person. That's amazing. And he invented it in 1763. And so you go from prior to the 1730s spinning like this. 1730, you make a spinning wheel. 1763, James Hargreaves creates the Hargreaves spinning jenny. And so now we can do up to 8 threads at a time. So now we're really bustling. But then the Arkwright spinning frame, or the water frame, which really excites me, and you're going to know why. It produced very strong threads, and it was powered by water wheels. And it was invented by Richard Arkwright, and the frame was invented in 1768. And it was a multiple thread spinning frame. Of course, water wheel downstairs, that's cool to me. So multiple spinning. But then in 1779, Samuel Crompton invented the Crompton's mule, and this is amazing. I actually have seen one because I went up to, I take some of my wool back when they were spinning. They don't any longer spin, but Ohio Valley Natural Fibers, they had a big mule up there. And what it is it's a combination of a moving carriage like a Hargreaves and a roller like the Arkwright, enabling for hundreds of spindles. They look a little like this shaft here. Hundreds of spindles could be spun at once. And it is so neat. When I went up there, there was all these spindles on this long track, and it would move close to the machine and back, and close to the machine and back, just like when we spin and you go like this. That machine did that, and then they independently spun on their spools. It was amazing, and that's what a Crompton's mule did. And so that is so close into our trajectory. 1730 is when the spinning wheel was invented. This was your friend prior to. You'd have never wasted a thing. And you know, when I talked about, I did an article in the Queen City Sampler Guild, and I talked about some of these things in there because I had done an expository issue about thread cards. And so, but I had to tell them, you know, why would you protect your thread? Well, look, if you were spinning on this, you'd be protecting that with everything you had. And so now with all of that information, now you know where your threads come from. Now I talked about silk. Silk is spun the same way as cotton and flax. There are cotton, flax, wool, silk, all these different things that you can cross stitch with. And we're going to go over to the table now, and now we're going to look at some of those things. And I've got some tools and some tips and some tricks there for you as well. So let's go hit the table.
Okay, I'm back. Now, let me adjust this a little bit. Okay. All right, now let's talk a little bit about thread. Okay, we're not going to talk about silks, even though I am going to show you a piece that has some silk in it, but it's going to be just for the sake of showing you it's sewn in the fabric because of the weight of it. But we talked about that in video 29, remember that. Okay, so what are the most common types of thread? Well, the most common type of thread is a DMC. And a DMC is a 6-stranded floss. And it comes in a variety of colors, lots and lots of colors. You pull it out this way. And on the number end, always remember that. If you didn't know that, pull it from the number end. Okay, and each one of them are numbered right here. Each strand can be, you flower your floss and you can separate all 6 strands apart and use them 1 strand, 2 strands, 3 strands, depending on your like and your desire for it. These are very common. They can be found everywhere from Walmart to Joann's to your LNS. They are considered a color fast thread, and you can buy them for between 75 cents and 90 cents. And they were just on sale in Joann's last week for 50 cents. So anyway, so this is a very common, easily accessible, very nice thread, 100% cotton. Okay, now what's another type of 6-stranded thread? Well, there's Sullivan's. Now you can't find Sullivan's everywhere, but it's very, very affordable. It's 69 cents on, if you go to mynotions.com, you can buy a 454 skein pack with all their colors for $113.50. Their number system runs congruent with a DMC. So this is a great next to, back up, inexpensive, very nice thread. You'll see it in the back of Cross Stitch magazine. It's 6-stranded. You flower it, you pull it one by one. Very nice cotton thread, color fast again. Okay, then I want to show you my favorite white. It is Cosmo white. Cosmo, their threads have a little bit of a sheen to them, but I don't know why, but Cosmo white just lays so beautifully. It is my very favorite. Cosmo is not readily available at a lot of places. French General in their embroidery kits, they always put Cosmo flosses in there. I know Kimberly Jolly from the Fat Quarter Shop loves Cosmo floss and has the whole set herself. They run about $1.70 for a skein, and they are from an Oriental company. But like I said, let's see, it's I want to say Chinese, maybe it's made in China, I'm not quite sure, but I love Cosmo thread. But Cosmo white I keep all the time. I cannot find my other favorite white. It is Flosh, and it is another DMC product, and Flosh is about $7.15. It's got 5 plies to it. But you use it as 1 single strand. So you get 168 yards, and that's equal to 6.5 skeins of thread of regular DMC or Cosmo. But it's $7.15, but do the math, you get 168 yards. But it is like the thickness of 2 strands. My friend Arlene Cohen, who is the designer behind Works by ABC, she does these magnificent lace work designs, and she'll add depth to her projects by using 1 strand of like a DMC and then use a floche next to it, which looks thicker. And she plays with tent stitches and all that, and you get all this dimension with 1 color of thread. So, but I love floche, and I will even, when I'm using 1 strand of thread, I will use a floche with that because it really shows up good. Because I don't know if it's because I know enough about the dyeing process from dyeing yarns that once you wet the product, it fluffs up. And so I'm wondering if like maybe white, because there's no dye added to it, it lays flatter. I don't know. But Floss is my favorite, a white next to a Cosmo white. Okay, now some other threads of interest. Let's talk about Valdani. I have the balls of Valdani in here, and I will take some out. And these are 3-stranded. You can take them apart, these Valdani balls. And these 3-stranded balls, they cost about $3.90, and they are dyed. They are not, you know, we don't want to treat anything that's dyed like that. You know, it can run. But they also, this is 3-stranded in a ball, but this is 6-stranded in a skein. And this is $3.30. And these are beautiful, beautiful threads. You can separate both of these. I'll show you a piece that I stitched with Valdani, this kind of Valdani. I did it on 14 count Aida. I did this years and years ago. And it is Rosewood Manor, and it's Quakers and Quilts. Isn't that beautiful? That's on a historic beige fabric flare fabric. It's beautiful. And I used all the called for Valdanis, and I used these balls, and I did not separate them. They all 3 threads. And it just made the most, is that not a gorgeous? This is Quakers and Quilts. I just did the Quakers. I didn't do the quilt squares under it. But it's one of my favorite pieces that I have hanging in my living room. And I did that with the Valdanis. And that turned out beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So that's another type of thread. Now, let's see. Then we start working over towards and into our hand dyed. And there's Gentle Arts. And they come and let's see, I can't remember, I forgot to find out how many yards were on here. It's 5 or 8 yards. And this will run you $2.58 average price for this. Beautiful, beautiful hand-dyed thread, so it modulates on its own without switching colors. So instead of having like 14 greens, this is piney wood. You could do that and it'll variegate very gently and be beautiful. Then you've got your Classic Colorworks. Classic Colorworks, I showed you in the silk video, they make Belle Soie silks, and they are dyed as well. This is a variegated dyed thread, and a Classic Colorworks runs about $2.60 for a skein of that. And there are 5 yards on here, so everybody's about 5-8 yards. And so that is another one. And then Weeks Dye Works runs about $2.58, and there are 5 yards on it. Now I am going to show you some tips and tricks in a minute with those threads, because I got some questions about getting them off the cards, winding them, how do you do that, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to sit these to the side because we're going to talk about those again in just a minute. Now, some other types of thread. This is a Vera Soie wool thread. DMC makes a wool thread. This is called Fine D'Alberson. This is very widely carried at Hobby House, and I'll show you an example of that. I am stitching Jane Parsons from the Wishing Thorn, and I am stitching it with the wools, and you stitch wool on 28 count because it's puffier and you have to do that. I bought this from Burgett this kit, and it came with everything that I needed, and it's with the wools, and I absolutely love stitching with it on the linen. I have stitched with wool doing needlepoint. I do love to needlepoint as well, but the feel of the wool going through the linen is just absolutely amazing. I absolutely love it. And so my Jane Parsons is being done with the wool soie d'Albert, Avera soie fine d'Alberson. I did have a price. I got a price for you. Wait just a minute. I must have put it on a different piece of paper. I have all the prices set over here so that I could be helpful to you. Let's see. I thought I wrote it down. You know what? I did. It's $3.76. I'm sorry about that. $3.76 for this. And it comes in 8.7 yards. So when you pull it out like that, and there's multiple threads, so you separate it. There's 4. Is it 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4. It's a 4 ply. So you take it apart and just use 1 on 28 count. And so that is a wool thread. And then let's talk about Ginny Thompson Flower threads. Now, I just finished a piece and I showed it to you. These are Ginny Thompson Flower threads. I bought a full set. These are for a kit that I'll show you over here in a minute. But the Ginny Thompson flower threads, they come 40 yards per card. 40 yards. And if you buy it directly from Ginny Thompson Flower Threads, this card is $1.35. That's a ginormous deal. And these are made like your grandmother would have stitched with these threads. They're a little more rustic and thicker. I absolutely love them. It was Burgett who I actually was introduced to from them. And I've bought multiple kits. I'll show you, but I'll show you I finished Anna Morgan 1845 from the Scattered Seed Samplers. I haven't taken her up to Craft Gallery yet to get her frame. So this was done on 32 count with Ginny Thompson flower threads, and they are just wonderful and gorgeous and comforting to stitch with. And that is been done with that. I absolutely love them. I'm going to show you a few other things that I have that that call for flower threads. This kit I bought from Chantelle's 141 Designs. You get the Ginny Thompson flower threads, and you get the pattern. And this pattern is from her Make Your Mark series, and it's Rose W. Dawson. And this is the little sampler, and you get all the threads, the finishing board, everything, the pattern. I did have to, I have my fabric. So you pick your own fabric. So I'm doing mine on a 32 count, but everything else comes with your kit. And I will link Chantelle down below, but she has some things with flower threads. And as well, Burgett has some other things with flower threads, and I'll show them to you really quick. I have bought several more from her, and that would be the Tyndall Sisters. And I bought it as a kit, and it came with my 32 count fabric and all of the Ginny Thompson threads. Isn't that just beautiful? Burgett's shop, the Wishing Thorn, I will link it below. These were two sisters that stitched these samplers, and you get the pattern, the fabric, and you get your threads, and you just can't beat it with a stick. It's just a comforting, it's easy on the eyes is what it is. And so when you're stitching it, this is a 32 count vintage country mocha that came with that. you can head over to the Wishing Thorn. Burgette would probably really love it if you did. And that's one of her patterns that you can often get kitted up with. You can get Jane Parsons, I believe, kitted up with, I'm not 100%, so you'll have to see, but I think you can get it with the Ginny Thompson or the wools. But I got mine with wool, and the Tyndale sisters I got with Ginny Thompson. And then as well, I purchased the kit from her for Elizabeth Hughes. You know what? I got the threads and the pattern for Elizabeth from her. I think, let me pull my threads out, my fabric out. I chose my own fabric. Oh, yeah, I did. It is a 32 count platinum Lugana. I felt like it matched the picture well, but it came with the pattern and all the called for Ginny Thompsons. And so that is a really fun fiber to stitch with. And like I said, easy peasy peasy on the eyes. And just, you feel like you know what it was like for those women back in the day when they were probably making their thread and how they stitched with it. Okay, now that is Ginny Thompson. Now let's move on to another type of thread. I just literally took the whole drawer. If you watch me, you've seen my drawers. These are Orifloss. And Lori Holt does a lot of stuff with an Orifloss. I love these. They're so neat. They come on a spool. It's a 6-stranded thread. And Lori Holt has curated a lot of her patterns, and she'll do boxes of these threads. This Aurifil, this is really great. I love the spool. Now these are about $5.14, and they have an array of colors, and they're pretty color fast as well. And so, but like I said, Lori Holt does a lot with these, and they are so fun, so fun. Then another type of thread that you might be interested in is a sulky thread. And I have a couple of these boxes. These are the sulky packs that have all the rainbow of colors. This is a 12-weight thread, which makes this thread equal to 2 strands. So if you're doing 28 or 32 or even 36, I know that like Liz Matthews loves 3 strands, and I know she takes that pretty far up in the count, maybe even 236. But anyway, you can use this in place of 2 threads, and they come in a multitude of colors. They have variegation. There are kits that have been created for different patterns by these. So these sulky threads are really neat. And these run you about $1.99 a spool. I was at actually the quilt show in Sharonville, and funny enough, at the quilt show, you know, there's all those cross crafters like myself, and they sold these sulky boxes for these sulky petites, and I bought all of the boxes for them, and they that has been wonderful. That makes it very easy to do those spools. And so I think I've covered. Oh, another type of thread is an anchor thread. Let me run and grab an anchor thread really quick. I forgot to bring it across the room. You know what? I've got it around here someplace. I apologize. It's like a spool of thread. It looks just like a regular spool of thread. I have so much of a mess. I'm going to definitely put the picture that I have up first and show you the mess that is my studio, because it looks terrible. But anyway, a sulky or an anchor thread is about 98 cents. It comes on a spool. It's 6-stranded, and you get a whole lot for it. You can find those at Michael's, Joann's, and all those types of places. I thought you'd like to see a little more stitching. This is a 46 count, and this has got 103 silk on it because it's thinner, and that way it really glides through that fabric well. This is a 40 count, and this was done with all over dyes with one thread. So beautiful, beautiful threads, whether it's silk, whether it's cotton. That's why I wanted to show it to you. Just beautiful, just beautiful. Now, some tips and tricks before we're done for the day. Okay, so there's some tools that we should talk about. People have asked questions, a few questions about how to store their threads, tools that will help them to get their thread together, and I'm going to show you just a few of those right now. And I'm going to bring this back, and I'm going to bring out a couple tools. These are thread winders. These two were made by R&R Woodworks KY. And this thread winder is by Scott's Mountain Craft Studio. This is the camping stitcher's husband. These products do the same thing. They wind thread. One of the questions that I received was, how in the world do you do weeks? Because weeks, let me show you. Once you take it off of its card, it's all in a circle. So like you can unfold one of these, this classic Colorworks, and it's not in a total circle. It's like a half skein. So now see, these are loose. And I'll show you what I do with mine. I come right here, because I don't use an extenuously long piece of thread, and I cut it right there. And so now my thread, now that I've messed it up, is this long. And then I will put it back on the card like this. One of our sweet stitchy friends has asked me this. They have a hard time getting their thread off. So Classic Colorworks and Gentle Arts, if you do it like that, that's very, very easy. Then you can take your needle, and then you can come right here, and you can take and put your needle under one thread. If I look at me, one thread, and then just pull it off that front loop. And the way you always get that loop in the front is when you pass your thread through, pass it through the front of the card to the back, and then make the loop. And so that's the way you do that. But this is where things get all higgity-piggity right here. See, because this is like a skein of yarn. I'm going to show you what I do with mine. I open it up like that, and I just begin to make, I unwind it like this. I let it roll over my hand so it doesn't get messed up. Now here's how you use a thread winder. You take and you put your thread right here. I'm going to go this way so I can wind that direction. Put your thread in the middle, and then you just begin to wind your thread on. You can do your DMC like this. This is a 9-inch. This is an 8-inch. This is going to give me an 18-inch length of thread. This will give me a yard length of thread. I prefer the shorter length because I don't want my thread to burr too much. Okay, and so here I am, and then I'm going to come right here, and I'm in the middle, and I'm going to cut it. I'm going to turn it over, and there we go. There's those lengths of thread, just like I just showed you over there. And I'm going to take it, and I'm going to put it through the hole, the front of the hole. I'm going to come out the back and open it up, and then I'm going to pull it through, and voila, there you go. Isn't that neat? Very cool. So if you didn't know how to wind your thread, that's a way to do that. Well, what are ways to store your thread? I get that question a lot. I was donated some thread in the baby group because people knew that I was a stitcher, and I received it this way. Now, I don't keep mine this way. These donated boxes I'm keeping for my granddaughter. That way she has thread, but these are all bobbinated. They've got their they've written the color number on there, and they've put them all in here, and they're bobbinated like that. As I showed you just a little bit ago with this thread, you would pull it out this way, and you can continuously pull. I've got a bobbin around here someplace. I brought one over to show you. Oh goodness, I have misplaced it. Okay, anyhow. Oh, here they are. They're right here. They're right here. Okay, so they do have a little bobbin winder that you could buy, but if it was just you, yourself, and you bought these can come in plastic. These are paper ones. There's 2 slits in the bottom right here. I'll show you how I would do this. I would just run a piece right there and then just begin to wind it on to the bobbin, and then just pull and wind and pull and wind, and you could get that all and bobbinate your thread that way. That's a way to store it. Another way is on floss drops. My friend Tina Egner from Team Egner on Etsy and on Instagram, she made these beautiful thread drops and sent these to me. And if I was going to, let's just say I'm going to borrow this thread right here just so I don't have to mess with another line. Let's just say I had done my thread winder and this was my thread straight off of this. Well, you could take it, if this was like a DMC or something like that, and just use this thread drop just the same way that you would use over there on your classic color works, your gentle arts, or in your weeks. And you just put it on the card and then just write the name on the back. You can put multiple ones on there. A lot of people, you'll see them kitted up that way. That's a way to do that. Another thing is let's just say that you had your spools and you had pulled a length of thread off of your spool and you wanted to save it. Let's cut a length of thread. There are these thread dials. Chantelle makes these. These are really great. And let's just say you only needed 1 thread, but you don't want to waste your thread. Well, you can put it on a thread dial. And if this is a wood one, and so I'll tell you what I would do is, let's see what the color number. This is 2130. So I would use a pencil and write 2130. That way, later on, I can just erase that off the back of my dial because it's wood. Now, if you had a plastic one, you could use a Sharpie and then use some alcohol to wipe it off if it was a plastic one. And so there's that. And then there's thread cards that do the same thing. Aren't those pretty? You can also buy these, and you can get a box of 50 of these for like, I don't know, $7 or $10 on Amazon. These little thread cards. There's these are custom made. You could wind it on here and then write the little number right there. Let's say if you had a project with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, or you could have multiples of this and you could use it. That's another type. Here's a multi-purpose tool from Farm Girl Dry Goods. This is a ruler and a thread holder. Another way to do things, as I've shown these lately too, this is if you've got something with a lot of thread, you could take a piece of and put it right here like that, but this little card slides out. You can put the symbol or the number of your color, but you can also poke a needle with thread right here and then lash it down there with that. So this is a great tool, helpful tool. And I had told friends that I would show those types of things. Another way to store thread is in floss away bags. And so let's say you didn't want to do this, or let's say that you had your Valdani and you want to keep it away from your silks and you want to separate that. So you could put it in there and protect it and store it some way like that. Some people hang them on rings. That's another thing. And another cool tool that I'll show you before our day is over today is the Cross Stitch Buddy Ultimate Tool. I bought this actually when I was at market and I forgot to show it in my video. This is the neatest thing. It has, I've got to get some color behind here so that you can see. I've got my berry bag right here. Let's just put my berry bag right here. Maybe you could see better. Yeah, you can see a little better. It's got 3 different winders so that you could go in 18-inch, 24-inch, 36-inch. It's got a corner gauge right here. Right here, you can lay this up against your linen. Let's say that you took it out of the bag and you don't know what it is. This will help you tell the size without having to go to a lot of work. This tells you, okay, my camera turned off again. I think I was over here. This will tell you how many strands of thread to use on the different counts of linen and Aida. And over here, this will tell you the needle, what needle that you really should use on there. So this is a great tool. And I bought it from the man who makes them. But you can buy one of these from Top Knot Stitcher. And I will place her information in the description box. And this is a really neat tool. It's like a whole bunch of tools right there in one, and a big long ruler.
Well, friends, I know that that was a long video, but I wanted to share with you all the things about linen and thread, and I hope that you picked up something new today. I hope you know where your fabric and your fibers come from and how it was done. Isn't that a neat thing to know? And then I gave you a few tips and tricks, and it's been a really fun time spending time with you today, and I thank you so much for joining me. Please like and subscribe if you haven't, and until I see you again with my regularly scheduled Flosstube, I wish you many happy stitches. Bye-bye now.